Welcome back with a smiling face. Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Embers of Rebellion. Last episode. Lucian, we were finally going home, and I was beside myself with panic, and I think that this was the slowest I had ever driven in my life. Cars were honking their horns behind me, and I glared at the driver in my mirror. Does he not see the baby on board sticker? Lucian 50 kms is already too slow for this strip. You're doing 20 under, Marin hisses at me as cars overtake me. We have fragile cargo in the car. What if their little heads wobble? Just saying that has me reduce my speed more. It wasn't worth the risk. We are more likely to get hit with you going this slow, Marin scolds, and I sigh. I'm serious, Lucian. Speed up or let me drive. They're more durable than you think, they are newborns. I catch Marin rolling her eyes. I get this is your first newborn, and you want to wrap them in cotton wool, but seriously, they are durable, geez. Valerian fell off the bed once, screamed his head off, but he is perfectly fine. You dropped him off the bed? I ask, horrified. No. Of course not. He rolled off. Schneier had a heart attack. She laughs. Why are you laughing? I asked, outraged. She was not holding them if she was going to be dropping them. Nothing. Just something your mother said when she raced to our room because I was screaming like a banshee thinking I killed him. What did she say? I asked, curious. I told her what happened, and her reply was, he's screaming. He's fine. It's when they don't make noise that you worry. I raise an eyebrow at her. How old was he? 6 months old. Don't even get me started on how many times I smacked the kid's head on the door frame lifting him into his car seat. He turned out perfectly fine, she states, while all I could think was how the heck my son was still alive? He should have brain damage with all these bumps to the head. Perfectly fine? The kid has OCD. See what dropping him did? Marin sighs and shakes her head. I wonder where he gets that from. I bet the entire house is baby-proofed, she taunts. OCD is not genetic, I tell her. I would debate otherwise, she retorts. And I don't have OCD, I argue. So you didn't baby-proof the entire place, she scoffs, then I swallow. Of course not. I tell her, opening the mind link. She shakes her head and peers out the window. What's up? Dante asks. He was watching Valerian for me since I couldn't fit everyone in the car. All the baby-proofing stuff, hide it. Undo it. I need to prove to Marin I don't have OCD. She thinks I am OCD, I scoff. Ah, but you do have OCD, Dante replies, and I bite back the urge to growl at him. No, I don't. Just do as I ask, SHT. I am 5 minutes out, on it, Dante says, and I cut the link. So, are you going to tell me the names you picked? Marin asks, leaning over to check the babies. You will find out tomorrow when I pick up the bracelets, I tell her, and she hisses, clutching her stomach as she turns back to face the front. Sit still before you hurt yourself, I'm fine, she says as I pull into the parking garage. That was the slowest drive of my life. Next time I am driving, she states, shoving the door open. Now, to master these capsules, they were a real BH to get in. I had to get my father to show me, who was just as useless, and he then enlisted John to help, but he was no help either. So we all gave up and let Zoe and Macy handle it. Marin plucks a capsule out, then the middle one while I was still struggling to undo the one I was in charge of. Squeeze the handle. The red button on the side and lift. I am squeezing and pressing. It's faulty. I tell her, becoming flustered. Marin clicks her tongue and walks around to my side, one baby capsule in each hand. She sets them down and pushes me out of the way with her hip. I glare at her when it takes her 2 seconds to do it. Now she was just showing off. You'll get the hang of it, she says, walking toward the elevator while I grab the baby bags. Man, these tiny creatures own some SHT. I felt like a mule carting it all up. When the elevator doors open, Dante opens the mind link as I step inside. How do I get the toilet things off? I can't even open the lid, Dante tells me. What? How am I supposed to know? I didn't install them. The handy person did just before you got there, not even Valerian can open it. I had to piss off your balcony earlier because of this contraption. He growls. Valerian is pulling down the gates. I don't get it. Why do you have gates up when they can't even lift their own heads, let alone walk? Marin presses the button impatiently, crossing her legs. Are you okay? I ask her. Yeah, I need to pee, she says, and I blink get the toilet thing off. Break it for all I care. I scream at Dante through the link. I'm trying. What do you think I am doing? Dante snarled as the door opened up. Marin waddles like a duck to the door, shoving the key in the lock. She twisted frantically and growled before the door opened, and she rushed inside. I trailed behind her to see her set the babies down next to the couch before she darted off up the hall, and I heard a crash. Lucian, she groans. I set baby C down and rushed up the hall to find she had tripped over a gate. She hauls herself up to run to the bathroom. Dante rushes out just before she enters, and she slams the door. And I look at Dante, who shakes his head. The next minute, I hear her scream. Lucian, she snarls as she tries to undo the toilet trap. I cringe and wait for the door to open. Not OCD, hey. I smile awkwardly as she folds her arms across her chest. Those puppies were huge, and I couldn't wait to touch them. Eyes are up here. Marin says while I lick my lips, imagining them jiggling above me. And now you get to clean the bathtub because I just had to pee in it, she growls, pushing past me. SHT. Marin watching Lucian, I found it rather amusing. He treated them like they were made of glass. Should she be crying like that? He asks, watching baby C scream her head off since she was struggling to latch while Lucian passed me, baby A, so I could tandem feed. She is fine, I tell him, though I was getting sick of calling them the baby alphabet. I wanted to know the names he chose, but he was remaining tight-lipped. Baby B was asleep. Or was until a few minutes into feeding. Can you grab her? I ask him. Although he was already walking to her bassinet, he leaned over, cooing and pulling faces at her. I watch him lift her before he subtly sniffs the air before holding her at arm's length, his fingers behind her little head as she stretched and farted. You need to change her, Lucian demands, and I raise an eyebrow at him. Please, he offers. No, you need to change her. I am feeding these two. I tell him with a smirk. I knew he could change a diaper. I had seen him change wet ones, and now he gets to change a SHTTY one. Lucian pursed his lips determined, and I tried not to smile and laugh. As he set her down on the end of the bed, gathering what he needed just as Valerian walked in. Ew, what's that smell? That would be dynamite. Lucian says, pointing to her squirming on the bed. He took her onesie off, unclips the nappy, and heaves instantly. Nope, he says. Yep. You gotta get used to it, I tell him. He heaves again, which makes Valerian heave while I watch, amused. I'm not helping. He needs to get used to it. I am not being in charge of diaper duty for all 3 babies. I'll swap you, he pleads, giving me puppy dog eyes. Oh, you figured out how to feed? I ask and he mutters something, tugging his shirt over half his face. Why is it black like tar? He chokes out. He cleans and wipes, heaving the entire time, his face turning red, and when he is finally done, he dresses her. Run this to the bin for me, he tells Valerian, dumping the nappy in his little hand. Valerian stares at the diaper that his father placed in his hand, horrified. I watch as he pales, just as Lucian picks up the baby. Valerian. I ask a little too late because he throws up all over Lucian's P number NTS. I watch Lucian's eyes widen, and he blinks a few times before quickly glancing down at his pant leg. Sorry, Dad, Valerian says, gripping his father's shirt to wipe his mouth on. I press my lips in a line trying to stifle my laugh. I watch as Lucian sets the baby down before he gags, running for the toilet to throw up himself. I sigh. Yep, this would be interesting, I thought to myself. Chapter 144. Lucian, you need to take the batteries out. Why doesn't she stop crying? I whined, hearing baby C scream for the 100th time since we got her home. That one was faulty, or she needed to be placed back on demo mode, I thought as I rolled over with my sandpaper eyes to retrieve her from her bassinet. Baby's cry, is all Marin offers as she shuffles up the bed and yawns. I peer at the clock. She wasn't even asleep for 45 minutes this time. It was 2:20 a.m. You need to get that one checked. Something is wrong with her, I tell Marin as I hand her over. Marin flops out a BB while the baby opens her mouth like a fish enjoying my fun bags, and Marin won't let me touch them either. I eye the baby with jealousy. I knew I was never getting laid again at this rate, and here Marin was flopping those out in front of me every 2 seconds. Does she not know how full my balls are? They need emptying. Marin's eyes go to me for a second. I wonder if she knows what I am thinking. I lay back down and just shut my eyes when another started screaming. Oh, how I took sleep for granted. It had been our first night at home, and I was already exhausted. No way I could survive this for. Wait, how many years do babies cry for? IGR0AN, and Marin snickers, and I swear if she says one more time, you'll get the hang of it, I will. I will. I will do absolutely nothing because I can't. Go to sleep, please. I need sleep, I whine, pulling the pillow over my head. Marin nudges me with her knee, and I sigh, rolling back out of bed to retrieve baby A this time. I hand her over, and Marin tries to get her to latch. I watch my fun bags deflate as the baby gulps down the goodness. You may need to make a bottle. My supply isn't very good, Marin tells me, and I nod while walking toward the door. Can you make me a cup of tea too, please? I yawn, going to the kitchen. I squint at the formula can, checking the scoops and mls before fixing a bottle just as I am about to walk out of the kitchen. Baby B wakes with a loud scream, then I remember I still hadn't made the tea. Torn, I look between the kettled wood equals in the hallway when Marin calls out. She is fine. It won't hurt her to cry for a minute or so, she sings out. I was halfway through making the tea when the crying stopped. A sigh of relief leaves me. This is my life now, it will be filled with diapers and bottle changes, and the smell of dirty diapers in the air was getting on my nerves. Back into the room, Baby B had fallen back asleep in the bassinet, Baby A and C had fallen asleep in her arms, and Marin had her head back resting on the headboard, also asleep. "Looks like I made myself tea," I whisper, walking into the room. I place the mug down, propping more pillows under her arms, so they don't slip out. Marin had become a baby pacifier, and I wasn't waking them. Laying down, I closed my eyes, but paranoia had me opening them every 2 seconds and flicking the lamp on, paranoid one would slip out of her arms. Giving up, I drink the tea, watching them sleep and sticking my finger under Baby B's nose every 2 seconds to check she is still breathing. Again I tried to sleep, yet that nagging voice in my head had me flicking the lamp on, and I decided to try to detach them from her. I unlatch one, only for Marin's eyes to fly open. "Did you make my tea?" she asks, glancing around before spotting the empty mug. Midday. Dante was on his way to come to get me. I finally figured out the last name to go with the middle name I chose. I just hoped Marin liked the names I picked. Each one had a link to someone special to us, or more importantly, each name was inspired by the strongest women I have ever met or wished I could meet. When he texts to tell me he is here, I climb off the couch, passing Baby C to her and kissing her and Marin's head. Everyone should be here soon for the baby's name reveal. I am hoping to get back before they get here, I tell her, and she nods. Everything seemed to come so naturally to Marin, and despite the chaos, our lives have been of late. She held it together well. We had so much to do and to get ready. The hotel was opening up soon. Marin had the council meeting next week, and she was officially changing the laws on the rogues. Court cases and investigations were still ongoing, and I spent half the morning on the phone or checking emails. Until Nixon was caught, I didn't want to be away unless necessary, so John came over early this morning to sit with her. Marin and I discussed briefly this morning the need for a bigger place, so Dad was getting the pack house ready. Marin wanted extra room so our fathers and Ava could remain with us to help with the kids, and I wasn't saying no to any help. One night had taught me this was going to be exhausting. Walking to the elevator, I pressed the button leaning against the wall and shutting my eyes. I was on the nod when the doors opened up to the underground garage. Dante was leaning against the hood, waiting for me. He wasn't happy about not being able to kill the other one responsible for hurting Zoe, yet he understood it was her choice. I don't know if I would have made the same decision as her. I would have wanted revenge, but it showed what sort of person she was. Despite hurting herself, she didn't want to hurt another or kill Amber, though death I believed was too kind even for that girl. "You look like SHT, Dante comments as I open the car door and slide into the passenger seat. He moves to the driver's side and hops in. "Thanks for taking me. I didn't trust myself to drive." I yawn while covering my mouth. He nods, starting the car and driving toward Dion's Jewelers. Derek had Clark removed from the city, and the other scumbag. Deacon is also under investigation for corruption within the council, Dante tells me. Good. I spoke with Alpha Dakeson earlier. He doesn't want Nixon's land. So we decided to leave it as neutral territory, I told him. More housing for the rogues then, Dante says while navigating around a roundabout. How is Zoe? I ask him. She says she is okay, Dante says with a sigh. Nightmares? I ask. No, guilt. She feels bad for Macy having to kill Carter. Even though Macy told her it wasn't just because of her, I think Zoe knows it was. Dante tells me. Macy loves Tatum, and they are good together, I tell him, but yet, I could not imagine being in her shoes and killing my mate. Think it is just knowing Macy did it for her. Anyway, hopefully, today will take her mind off it. I have to pick them up after I drop you back, Dante tells me. We pull up along the road and climb out. I was excited to see the bracelets engraved and nervous about the names. Dante knew 2 of the names and even tried to help me pick a name suited to the middle name I was stumped on. It wasn't usually a middle name, and nothing seemed to go with it until I found something perfect. The bell rings as we step inside, and Dion looks up. Just waiting on that last name. The other 2 are done, he tells me, getting to his feet and pushing his glasses up his nose. Summer, I tell him, and he nods, walking out the back to do the last engraving. Summer? Dante asks. Marin's mother's maiden name. It's also the name she used to go by before I found her. It seemed fitting to go with the other, I tell him, and Dante smiles. I can't wait to see her face when she hears them, Dante chokes up. He knew the meaning behind each name. All names from women I found inspiring, and each held a special meaning to not only me, but I knew they would hold dear to Marin too. Dion takes about 20 minutes before he returns. Using the polishing cloth on the last one, he sets them in a little box and bags them for me after I check them. Satisfied, we left and headed back home, yet the trip was taking way too long. I was excited to show Marin, but these roundabouts. Seriously, why do they have so many roundabouts along this strait? Someone needs to complain to the council, I growl. Dante raises an eyebrow at me. You designed this road to stop the hooning. You are the council. Complain to yourself. Dante laughs, and I roll my eyes. Marin I anxiously waited for Lucian to return while going over bridal magazines with Ava. Dad was making me coffee while I sat and pondered what names he chose. Valerian sat on the floor, watching his sisters squirm in their swings. Every noise they made had him jumping to give them their dummies or hushing them. All morning he had been passing diapers and following me around, wanting to help, wanting to cuddle and touch them. They were his prized possessions until the diaper changes. Then he was nowhere to be seen. Dad had just set my coffee down on the coffee table when the door opened and Lucian walked in. I eagerly looked over the back of the couch toward the entry. Evie, Lucian says, leaning over the couch. He pecks my lips, looking down at the magazine sitting open in my lap. Finally going to start planning, he asks and I nod. Show me, I tell him, reaching for the bag in his hands. He shakes his head, grab the girls and bring them into the room first, then you can see. He tells me, and I put before hauling me off the couch and over to the baby swings. I grab baby A, and Ava passes me baby B while Lucian grabs baby C. I was glad to be rid of the baby alphabet and couldn't care less what he named them at this point, as long as they had names. Real names. I follow Lucian into the room, and he places the baby on the bed, and I place the other 2 beside her, peering over his shoulder as he rummages through the jewelry bag. Away, you will see in a minute, he says, shooing me. I growl at him and sit near the bedhead, watching as he clasps each one in place. When he was done, he glanced at me nervously. Come on, they can't be that bad. Now let me look, I whine at him. Lucian moves aside and motions to them. I hop up, going over to examine the gold bracelets on their wrists. My lip quivers as I pick up the first one's little wrist. I blink back tears, moving to the next. And the last one near broke me. You like them? Lucian asks nervously, and I peer up at him. Love them, I whisper, and he smiles, stepping closer and wrapping his arms around me. I squeeze him tight, resting my head against his chest. Their names are perfect, I tell him, looking up at him, and he kisses my nose. Hearing the door moments later, I smile, hearing voices echoing throughout the place as Macy, Tatum, and Taylor arrive, along with Zoe, Dante, Casey, and Callan. Scooping the girls up, Lucian took two while I grabbed baby C. I think her name is fitting. She is definitely a troublemaker with all her crying, Lucian comments as he walks out to greet everyone. They all chatted excitedly while Dad made himself handy in the kitchen. Dad! I call to him, and he looks over at me. Come sit, I tell him. He stops what he is doing. He goes to sit with Callan on the ottoman. No, next to Macy, I tell him. Lucian moves across to where Zoe is sitting with Dante and hands her one baby. Can I look? She asks all excitedly, clapping her hands before taking her from Lucian. You can look, Lucian tells her. Zoe does, and she falls quiet for a second and nods, choking a little before looking up with tears in her eyes. Well, what's it say? Macy asks impatiently while trying to peer over my father's shoulder. Summer Zoe solace, Zoe chokes as I hand the next baby to Callan. He smiles as he looks at her bracelet. Now, I said I wouldn't name her after you, but I added a spin on it, Lucian whispers to me. Marin Valerie Solace, Callan states before leaning down and kissing the top of her little head. Lucian turned to my father before passing her over while Dad shook his head, tears streaming down his face. He already knew before even looking. Your maid sacrificed herself for her grandchildren, and none of them would exist if she didn't, Lucian tells him. Macy peers down at the bracelet, softly brushing her thumb over the back of Bub's hand. 5 remarkable women, and I couldn't think of any better way to honor them, Lucian tells them. Well? Zoe asks, and Macy sniffles. Claire Macy Solace, she stammers, and Tatum grips her shoulders. Our village, I tell them. Our family, Lucian adds. Chapter 145. Marin. 6 weeks later, the two of us had pretty much settled into a routine by this point, everything seemed to be going smoothly. As a result, the laws against rogues have been removed completely. Though the hotel had a plumbing hiccup, and still wasn't open. Lucian was currently going to deal with that while I was at my dress fitting. He was meeting me afterwards so we could go grocery shopping. We had finally moved into the pack house, and the extra room was welcomed. Dad and Ava were currently living with us to help with the girls, but today Dad and Callan were stuck helping Lucian today. They were also now head of the council, which was also taking up most of the time during the day. Clark pleaded guilty to his charges along with the others, and they were now rotting away in prison cells. Yet we still had no idea where Nixon was, and despite watching his wife, she never left the house, or if she did, she never left her old pack territory. Valerian, can you pass Evelyn her dummy? I ask him while the lady finishes pinning my dress. Zoe and Macy were supposed to come to the fitting with me and helped me pick out my dress with Ava, but all of them were busy today. The 3 of them chose violet bridesmaid dresses, and I chose a beige dress, yet I was still dropping weight, and now I had gone back to normal. The dress needed taking in even more. I had one more fitting after this one to retake my measurements. It had been a mission to haul all the kids into the car by myself, so I brought Valerian along instead of sending him to school. The dressing fitting took forever, and I was excited about going home. I was exhausted, and the girls were sick of sitting in the stroller, which barely fit in the back of my car. Slipping the dress off, I quickly got changed and decided to ring Lucian to find out how far away he was. I kind of hoped he would volunteer to do the grocery shopping himself. Though I know, he wanted me to come with him so that I could go to the reserve and finally shift on the way home. I still hadn't. Time was always against me, or I was far too tired. Knowing how it usually exhausted me, I wasn't all that tempted to shift. Lucian answered the phone on the second ring and I could tell he was in the car by the echo. "Where are you?" I asked, coming back out of the dressing room. I thank the ladies that work here and kick off the brakes to the stroller. "About 15 minutes away," Lucian tells me. "Okay, I will start getting the kids in the car," I tell him, pushing the pram out the door as Valerian holds it open for me. "Yep, I will follow you home. Dad is meeting us there. He said he would watch the kids for us while we go grocery shopping and for a run," he tells me, and I sigh but say nothing, knowing we hardly spent any alone time together, and I know he was craving that. I could tolerate being exhausted if it made him happy. "Okay, see you in a few minutes," I tell him, stepping into the hot sun and squinting at the brightness. "That you will, I love you too," I tell him before hanging up. It was scorching hot today, the sun high in the sky. Valerian and I made our way across the parking lot. I hit the fob unlocking the doors as we approach, and Valerian climbs into the back and sits on the center console so he can help do up the seat belts. He was my little helper and loved being able to help in any way he could. He adored his sisters, and we worried he would be upset about not having a brother, but he seemed to all but forgotten now. I place Claire in the middle seat, and Valerian starts doing up her belt while I get the next one out. We clip all three of them in, and I ask Valerian to play with them while I pull the stroller down. His car seat was in the front, which wasn't ideal, but Lucian was getting a van next week for me. We were just waiting for it to arrive. Trying to fold the stroller, movement near the bakery down from the bridal store catches my eye and I see Amber walking out looking terrible. It was the first time I had seen her. She glances at me before dropping her head and rushing toward her car. I sigh, going back to my task. Folding the stroller into my car, I pop the trunk and jam all the crap in it. A bigger car is what I needed. I push all my weight on the trunk to close it, and I can see Valerian shaking the rattle for the girls excitedly. I smiled, watching him for a second. He waves to me, and I wave back when a strange expression crosses his face. My brows furrow when he screams. "Mum, behind you!" he screamed, the most blood-curdling scream. It sent my blood cold when I felt someone grab my hair, and I heard the sound of my head smashing into the trunk before everything went black. The sun shining behind my eyelids confused me as my head pounded. I sat up, wondering why I was on the ground. My keys that were clutched in my hands were now gone. "Unlock the door, you little SHT!" I hear a woman snarls. I blink when I hear my kids screaming. "Gr0ANING, I sit up." "Stop that," she yells as I hear my car doors unlocking and locking. Sitting up, I pull myself up, clutching the trunk, and my eyes widen when I see Nixon's wife hit the fob. The doors unlock, and she rips the door open before Valerian can push the lock back down. The girls screamed, and Valerian screamed for me, petrified. My heart raced when I saw her go to get in the driver's seat. Yet all I could think was she was trying to take my babies. I run at her, tackling her, and we both smash into the open driver's side door. When I hear a snarl somewhere behind me, she drops the keys, and we both scramble to get them just as I hear Valerian slam the door shut. We wrestled for the keys while I screamed for help, when fingers gripped my hair, yanking my head back. I tossed my elbow back, connecting with someone behind me before diving back onto Nixon's wife as her outstretched hand reached for the keys. I land on top of her, snatching the keys before she could, and hitting the lock button just as I am hauled off. "Get the keys," "You useless woman," I heard Nixon's voice growl as I am ripped off his wife. My blood runs cold, and I only do what I can think of first. I toss the keys toward the store's roof as hard as I can. The keys land on the roof. Valerian was screaming his head off inside the car, while I kicked at Nixon's wife as she tried to get close to me. "Just take her. Hurry," she screams at Nixon. I twist in his grip, my hair ripping out painfully before punching him in the balls from my bent position, and he lets go with a grunt, just as she punches me in the ribs. I gasp for air, feeling my ribs break before she knees me in the head. I see black momentarily as I hit the ground, coming back to Lucian's voice screaming in my head and asking what's happening when I see Nixon punch the window. The snarl that left me was more of a roar as I shifted, my body smashing his against the car and denting the door before I was ripped off by claws sinking into my rump. I twist, swiping at Nixon's wife, who had shifted into a murky brown wolf. My claws slashed down her face as Nixon's teeth sank into the back of my neck. "Lucian!" I scream through the mind link as the woman in the store, hearing the commotion, races out only to pause as I squared off with the alpha while trying to keep my eyes on his wife. The car was off, and it was stinking hot, and I knew my car was heating up like a stoven inside. Nixon lunges at me, and I ducked, sinking my teeth into his hind leg, when his wife grabs my tail, ripping me backward. The screeching of tires in the distance told me Lucian was close. I just needed to hold off a little longer. I could see the woman from the store on the phone to the police, and I would slap her for standing there if I survived long enough. "Why are you just standing there?" I hear a voice snarl at the woman. Nixon's jaws grab my front leg, and he shakes his head, but that means he left his neck wide open, and I chomped down on the back of it. My spine felt like it was breaking as his wife yanked on my tail, trying to get me off him, but I wasn't letting go. They weren't taking my babies. They would have to kill me first. That when something unexpected happened, I thought she left and I realize it was her voice I heard yelling at the shop assistant. One minute I am being ripped apart by them, the next Amber attacks Nixon. Her malt-colored wolf latching its jaws around his back leg and shaking viciously while I turn on his wife. Chapter 146. She shouldn't have tried to touch my babies. My instincts were running feral, and she backed up, almost tripping over her own tail as she tried to get away from my teeth. Pouncing on her, my teeth rip into her neck, my claws sink into her sides, and she wails loudly while thrashing. I start ripping at her neck, tearing the flesh from her bones, spraying her blood everywhere. It drenched me when I heard a whimper behind me and knew I only had moments before Nixon was on me. She bucks wildly, trying to throw me off, as her skin peels back. She would bleed out before I could go for the kill. I let go before chomping down again, only this time on the side of her neck, curling my claws under her ribs, and shaking my head. My vision turns red as her blood gets in my eyes. She rears up on her hind legs, and my claws slash down her sides as I am thrown back. I hit the ground, landing on my side, my chin hitting the concrete, and I spit the chunk of fur on the ground and skin in my jaws, her blood molesting my taste buds. Getting to my feet, I went to attack her again when I slammed into the car. The thud was loud as Nixon's teeth rip into my chest. Valerian screamed, and the windows smashed at the impact. Their screams ring out loudly behind me. Nixon's teeth latch onto my front paw and he flings me to the side. Getting up, I am smashed by his wife again, and I see Amber a few meters away when I hear claws on metal and see Nixon trying to get to my kids. I thrash, kicking her off, and my teeth wrap around her neck. The sickening crack as I lifted her and slammed her down made my teeth ache as her neck broke in jaws. I charge at Nixon, but before I reach him, I am forced to skid across the ground as Lucian appears in front of me. He grabs the scruff of Nixon's neck and rips him back. Nixon goes flying before Lucian turns on him. Yet my focus was checking on my kids. My paws hit the side of the car, the broken glass cutting me as I peered in to find the okay, though Valerian had a scratch on his from where it looked like he tried to shove Nixon's head out of the car. "Dad!" he screams, looking past me, and I turned to find Lucian and Nixon fighting, although Lucian hadn't shifted, not having the chance as Nixon lunged at him. But watching him, I found he didn't need to as he dodged him easily, landing blows against the enormous wolf. Yet my heart nearly stopped as I watched Nixon's wolf launch across the air straight at him. I sucked in a gasp. About to help when they collided, Nixon's jaw snapped at his face as he was thrown backward, only Lucian pivoted at the last second, his hands grabbing Nixon's fur and pulling him under him. His arms wrapped around Nixon's neck as they hit the ground. Nixon was no match for Lucian. He was stronger and faster as he wrapped his legs around the beast's torso. Nixon's ribs crack under the pressure as Lucian's arms wrap around his neck and he squeezes his legs. Nixon thrashes, snapping his jaws wildly and close to his face when he shrieks. 1 minute, he was thrashing under Lucian's grip. The next, Lucian grabbed Nixon's bottom jaw with one hand and the top with the other. My stomach heaved when he pried Nixon's jaw wide, snapping it. His bottom jaw hung limply, and blood sprayed everywhere. Yet still, Lucian didn't let him go as Nixon's screaming howls cut out. Lucian's canines slip out in his rage as Nixon loses the fight, his body moving slower as he bled out. When I saw Lucian's claws slip free before he punched his hand as he moved on top of him straight down Nixon's throat, I could hear his insides being torn to pieces by his powerful razor-sharp claws. Blood gushed and spewed out of Nixon's mouth as he forced his arm to his elbow down his throat before reefing it out and along with it, Nixon's heart. He drops it standing up. His entire body was drenched from head to toe in Nixon's blood when his eyes moved to Amber, who was trying to sit up. It was at that moment I realized he was going to kill her, thinking she was involved. "Lucian!" She tried to help. I screamed through the mind link as his hand reached for her. He stopped glancing over his shoulder at her just as police cars screamed toward us with their sirens blaring loudly. Amber drops her head, but she looks terrible, and the moment he stands up, relief floods me. He turned to face me, and I felt woozy. Lucian reaching for Ember, I was furious. They tried to attack my kids. My mate. "Lucian!" She tried to help. Marin screams through the link, and my hand pauses before I grab her. I peer over my shoulder at Marin. When I got here, all I saw was my mate fighting for her life and our kids, but turning to face her, I was slapped with shock. Her wolf was magnificent, strong, and rivaled my own in size. Her gunmetal grey fur was covered in blood as she sways on her feet, and I could feel the poison running through my system and my lips part. She was covered in bites, and I had no doubt that the poison running through my veins was forsaken venom. Looking at Amber, I could tell she was feeling its effects too when cop cars flooded the parking lot. "Marin!" I stammer as she sways again before running at me. I catch her wolf as she pounces on me, her tongue licking every inch of my face. Relief floods me when I feel through the bond to find the venom not affecting her, proving my DNA in her veins was enough to give her some immunity, though I could tell she felt queasy. Yet her relief upon seeing me and the adrenaline overrode the effects. "You're beautiful," I tell her, pulling her furry head back and stopping her mauling tongue. I look past her at the car. Valerian, I could see talking to his sisters as the police started pulling them from their seats. I sucked in a breath, seeing them thrashing and screaming in the officer's arms, and I knew they were all right. I had never been so petrified as when I saw Nixon's wolf's head inside the window. Marin shifts in my arms, and I rip my shirt off as she does, yanking it over her head before she even had fully shifted back. The moment she did, she rushed toward our kids, and I tugged her back. I can feel forsaken venom. Can't you feel it? I ask her, and she whimpers, wanting to go to the kids, but we couldn't risk them getting the blood on them, not knowing if it will affect them. I wrapped my arms around her waist, knowing I was the only thing keeping her from snatching them out of the officer's arm just as ambulances finally get on the scene. Amber is rushed off and disappears while Valerian is checked over. Nixon only appeared to have scratched his arm, not actually have bitten him. It's over, love. It's finally over, I whisper to her, and she inhales deeply, watching our kids being fussed over. My car had run into another, not having turned it off when I slammed on the brakes and jumped out as I pulled in. However, I could not care less about the damage, the main thing was my family was okay. Guilt gnawed at me. What if I didn't get here in time? What if they had succeeded in taking them or killed them all? Despite all my rampant thoughts, immense relief flooded the bond, and I know this was something that had been an endless worry for her. Not knowing where Nixon was had the entire city on edge. And now we did, dead at our feet. Now, hopefully, we can finally move on with our lives. Chapter 147. Marin. Another 4 weeks later. Keep your eyes closed, Lucian said as I walked blindly with my hands out in front of me when I heard Macy and Zoe's voices. Is that Zoe and Macy? I gasped, trying to lift Lucian's blindfold over my eyes. He slaps my hand away, and I reach out blindly before slapping someone. Ouch! That you, Marin? Macy asks. Lucian blindfolded me before we left and refused to tell me where he was taking me. Oops, sorry, I tell her. Wait, are you blindfolded too? I ask her. Yeah, and Tatum with directions. I tripped over the gutter back there, Macy growls. My knee is killing, she growls. Kids, slow down and away from the paint, it's still wet. Dante screeches just as the sound of their voices reach my ears. A hand grips my arm. Glad I'm not the only blind one around. I was becoming paranoid he walking me off a cliff, Zoe says, and I know it, her hand on my arm. It slides down to grip my hand and gives me a squeeze just as my hand finds Macy's. Those conspired against us. Macy hisses. Though with them here, I had a good idea of where I was, which was surprising. Lucian said the hotel wouldn't be ready. He had every excuse to keep us away from this place, from a gas leak to plumbing issues and electrical faults. I swear if they have ruined our hotel. Zoe hisses, and I chuckle, knowing there would be blood. Maybe the cliff was a better idea, Dante mutters, and Lucian laughs behind me. Okay, can we take these off? We figured out where we are. Macy says. 1 second, you have to lift your legs and step up onto the wall, Lucian says. Wall? I ask, shuffling my feet, not wanting to trip. Shouldn't be an issue for you, Macy. You're good at lifting your legs around your ears, Tatum snickers, and she growls. Language, you brute. Or I will jam your legs behind your head and test your flexibility, she growls at him. My feet hit something, and I know it's the wall Lucian mentioned. You couldn't have walked around the wall, N.A., too much entertainment watching you all trying to lift your legs high enough, Dante laughs. All three of them laugh behind us, earning growls from us. Lucian grips my hips, placing me on the little wall. It wasn't very high yet, I wobbled, holding my balance, felt the girls wobbling on their feet too. Now stay there. And don't fall, or you'll ruin the garden bed beneath you, Lucian says. I sigh impatiently, wanting to take the blindfold off. Okay, you can all remove them now, Dante calls, and I rip mine off at the same time the girls do. I untangle my hair from it before looking up. We all gasp simultaneously at the sight before us. Our hotel was restored to its former glory, but that wasn't what made me gasp. I knew what the plans looked like. I was shocked that the old fountain was gone that sat in the center of the driveway. In its place was a huge statue. Zoe cups her hands over her mouth in awe, and Macy squeezes my hand as we look up at ourselves. The statue was amazing. Valerie stood up the top, and a photo I had of Valerie was used, but instead of the banner she held in that photo, she held the sign for our new hotel. Village Retreat. Beneath her was a statue of Macy, me, and Zoe. All standing at the bottom, on a pile of tools and rubble. We all had our arms cradled, a baby in all our arms, and I knew they represented Taylor, Valerian, and Casey in our struggles to get this place up and running. This is amazing, Macy whispers, her arm sliding around my waist as she rests her head on my shoulder, and Zoe does the same. It's perfect, Zoe whispered as I stared up at the women who inspired us all. Valerie would have loved it, and I knew she would be watching. Knew we made her proud because I was proud of what we built. We had built something extraordinary. Something that made all our hardship so worth it. Zoe snorts, choking on a sob, and I rub her back, looking at her when she points toward the massive statue. Look at the shirts, she says, pointing at our uniforms. The detail was magnificent, and no wonder Lucian was putting it off for so long. It would have taken ages to have made. Even the little details like our name tags on our shirts were included, and I read the tiny little detail on them. Instead of our names, it had something else. Watch me. We watched, Tatum says. We saw, Dante adds. And we loved you all more, Lucian finishes. Macy snickers. And Zoe and I laughed at them. Shall we go inside? Dante asks us, and we all nod eagerly. Walking into the restaurant, we find all our old staff waiting, dressed in their uniforms, the place decorated and food on all the tables. Welcome home, Lucian whispers behind me, and I see Ava walk across the restaurant with the girls in the stroller, a huge grin on her face. Wait, who's having a baby? Macy asks, pointing toward the back of the room where a baby bunting hung along the wall. Cakes and candy decorated the tables in that corner. We decided to kill two birds with one stone, the grand reopening, Lucian says, and I gape, looking at my sister, but she shakes her head. You said we would wait, Zoe hisses at Dante. My eyes widen and so does Macy's. Zoe glanced at her nervously, and I knew she was worried about telling Macy from the look on her face. She blushes and Macy's mouth opens and closes like a fish in her shock. You're pregnant, she whispers. Rushing over and cupping Zoe's non-existent belly. Yes, I was trying to hold off telling everyone until I was showing, she mumbles. You're pregnant. Macy gushes excitedly before the smile falls off her face completely. Wait, you're pregnant, and they knew before us, she says, outraged, pointing to Tatum and Lucian. Dante wasn't supposed to tell, Zoe growls at him, and he smirks. Oh, I bet it's gonna be. Macy starts to predict when Dante clamps a hand over her mouth. You quiet with your witchy voodoo. It will be one baby. One. Dante says before shrieking and ripping his hand away from her mouth. Ew, you licked me, Dante says, wiping his hand on his jeans. Zoe and I laugh. Oh, let me help you open all your presents, Macy gushes excitedly, steering Zoe toward the table at the back. I watch them wander off when an arm drops across my shoulders. Looking up, I see it is my father. Your mother would have loved this, he whispers as I rest my head on his shoulder. Mothers, you were as much Val's as Lucian is, Callan says, gripping my shoulder and leaning down to peck my head. I nodded, wiping a stray tear at their words. Yes, they would have, I whispered. Dust, I curse. Terrible, isn't it? Callan mutters, passing me a handkerchief. I pop, pop, Valerian screeches, wanting Callan's attention. I have been summoned, he says, wandering off. Dad sniffles and I look up to find his nose all red and his eyes puffy as looked around the place. I offer him the handkerchief, and he dabs his eyes before clearing his throat. You really showed them, bub. Showed me, he says, and I nod. Unable to form words. I'm proud of you, proud of what you built and the alpha you have become. Most of all, I am proud that you're my daughter, he says, pressing his lips to the side of my head and wrapping his arms around my shoulders. I love you, kiddo, I love you too, I tell him, squeezing him back. We stand there for a bit, watching everyone. So, what's next? Dad asks, and I look up at him, resting my chin on his chest. This man was once my hero. Then my rival, but now he was just my dad. What's next is you walk me down the aisle, I tell him, and he chokes, nodding his head and crushing me against him. I'd be honored, he whispers, squeezing me tight. Chapter 148. Marin. 4 months later. It was scorching hot today, and Macy, Ava, Zoe, and I had just left from the final dress fitting. It wasn't my dress that needed altering, but Zoe's this time. Her growing baby bump was getting bigger every day. I just need to grab bread and milk. I don't feel like stopping after getting Valerian from school, I tell the girls as we step out of the bridal store. I'll come, I need to grab a few things too, Macy says, slipping her sunglasses on. Zoe pulled the sunshade over the stroller, and we walked the short distance to the shopping center. It was easier to walk than wrangle all 3 girls in the car and the stroller. Walking into the shops, I sigh as the cold air conditioning sweeps over us. We walk through the shopping center when Macy shrieks, making us all nearly jump out of our skin when she takes off toward a store. Man, this baby has more clothes than I do at this point, Zoe whines as Macy bounces on her heels, holding up a blue Winnie the Pooh onesie. No, Macy, please. I am running out of places to put all his clothes, Zoe whines, but Macy wasn't hearing it as she wandered into the store. I waited out the front. The store was much too small for me to navigate the stroller around. When Macy comes out, she is holding 2 bags full of baby boy clothes. You're impossible, Zoe tells her, but she thanks her anyway. So, have you and Tatum had any luck yet? Ava asks her, nudging me aside and taking over the pushing of the stroller. No. We met one surrogate the other week, but Doc said the chances of finding a she-wolf to donate her eggs is near impossible. So we thought of adopting, she sighs, and I beeble my lip. Tatum and Macy wanted a child, and Macy wanted to give Tatum his own child, but her options were limited. And besides human donor eggs, she had had no luck. The surrogate? Zoe asks. A little cookie, and Tatum worried she wasn't of sound mind to carry and hand the child over at the end, Macy says. Some things aren't meant to be, she states as we walk into the grocer. I grab a few groceries, and so does Macy. I was excited to get home, and poor Zoe's feet were so swollen from standing all day, so I knew she wanted to get home too. We were at the checkout, and I had just set my basket down when Zoe nudged me with her elbow toward the self-serve across from us. Looking up, I see Amber. I tried to find her after the attack from Nixon, but as soon as she was better, she left the hospital. And I had no idea where she was even living, though we heard rumors that she was homeless. We constantly checked the homeless shelter to see if she showed up, but never found any sign of her. Is it weird that I feel terrible for her? Zoe whispers as she scans her minimal items. Macy leans against the register and peers over at her. No, she lost everything. Her family, her pack. We have been where she is. That is probably why, I tell her. Ava smiles sadly. Amber was our friend growing up, so seeing her down in the dumps bothered me. This was not the Amber we were accustomed to. The clerk bags our items when I hear her self-serve register go off, saying her card declined. My stomach sinks, and I peer over to see what she is buying, only to find canned food and toilet paper. Was she really struggling that bad? Evie. Zoe whispers, nudging me and nodding toward her. Zoe was too kind-hearted, and most in her position wouldn't care for the girl after all the heartache she sat by and kept tight-lipped about. But we knew exactly what it was like to be in her shoes. So who's going over there? Macy sighs, looking at us expectantly. A smile slips onto my face, and Zoe nods to me. Crossing over to the self-serve area, she tries her card again, only for it to decline before turning to the girl overseeing to ask her to remove some items. Leave it, I tell the woman, waving her off. Amber jumps as I approach her. She was wary of me as I pulled my card from my wallet. No, no. It's fine, Amber tries to stop me from tapping my card on the payment machine. Her cheeks flame as I pay for the few things she has. You didn't have to do that, she whispers. Yeah, I did. Everyone needs help, Amber. Maybe not financially, but no one can say they have never struggled. And those that claim they never have, are liars. I tell her when I feel someone brush up against me. Amber steps back, and I notice it is Zoe. She holds her hand out to Amber, one of our business cards in her hand. If you're looking for work, we need kitchen staff and cleaners, Zoe tells her. Amber takes the card and looks at it. You would hire me, she asks, clearly shocked. Why, she says while looking between Zoe and me. However, it was Macy that answered as she came behind us. Because we have been where you are, Macy tells her, and I see Ava waiting off the side with the girls in the stroller. You made poor choices but did the right thing in the end, I tell her, turning to leave her be. Zoe wanders off over to Ava. I turn to follow after Macy. Marian? Amber asks, and I stop. Thank you, she says, holding up the card and motioning toward her groceries. I nod before walking off. Well, we tried and offered, it is up to her if she accepts our help or not. Lucian. A week later, as I sat at the bridal table, I watched her from where I was seated. While I twisted the ring around my finger, a smile appeared on my IPS. Taking off the ring, I stared down at the engraving on the inside of the ring. At last, she had given herself to me, and now she would always be able to remind me how fortunate I am to have her in my life. My love, my mate, my alpha, the engraving read. I was complete with my Luna by my side, I was complete with my family, and I was complete with myself, content with the life we had built. My feeling of completeness when I watched her dance with the girls and the children was something I had never experienced before. It was the last piece to put everything together, and she looked stunning. It was the perfect finish to everything. Her hair was pinned back from her face, and her hair cascaded down her back in soft dark curls. Small flowers were pinned into her hair. She looked like some sort of princess in a fairy tale. I couldn't wait to mess up her hair to see those curls turn messy and damp as I slammed into her from behind. She wore an ivory and beige lace dress that hugged every curve of her body, flaring out at her hips in pale silk that seemed to enhance her every curve in a subtle way. Curves I couldn't wait to trace with my hands and mouth. As her arms were covered with pale lace, glimpses of flesh were visible, leaving me with a desire to press my lips to them and taste her milky skin. The back was open, revealing skin that I knew later would be covered in marks from the brutal way that I was going to FK her. I couldn't wait for the night to be over, so I could take her back to the suite and tangle my fingers into her dress as I stripped her from her. The perfect vision that she was now had me anticipating the night's end. To see the meticulously done mascara smeared across her cheeks as tears streamed down her cheeks, and she lost herself again to me. I wanted that skin to be marked up for the world to see that she was mine, and now she was, in every way possible. I watch her as she turns her head towards me and waves for me to dance with her. A smile spreads across my face as I get up from my seat and make my way across the dance floor, where she had spent the majority of the night. When I walked up behind her, my hands fell onto her hips, and I glanced down at her. I saw she was tipsy, her cheeks flushed, her skin shimmering under the fairy lights. She turns in my arms, wrapping her arms around my neck, and I lean down, brushing my lips against her softly. Although the music was too fast for the way we stood swaying from side to side, I couldn't care less as everyone, and everything slipped away, and it was as if there was only us here alone, as if nothing else mattered. Through months of chasing her, I regained her love and trust. There was a time when I thought she would be the biggest regret in my life. As it turned out, she was my redemption. Epilogue. Marin. A year later, Zoe and I sat with Lucian and Dante, as we waited for Doc to tell me how many eggs they were able to extract that were viable. Man, I have never been so nervous in all my life. I whisper to Zoe. I know. My hands are shaking, she whispers. What if she says no? Zoe worries as she bounces her son, Noah, on her lap. Macy was not able to find a surrogate or an egg donor. Zoe had come to me and told me she wanted to offer to carry a baby for Macy, yet she wasn't sure she was comfortable carrying a baby that was biologically hers. So after speaking with Lucian and telling him what Zoe wanted to do and that we just needed an egg donor, he sighed heavily. You want to donate your eggs? I nodded my head. I needed his blessing, because it was a big ask for him, knowing biologically the child would be mine and Tatum's. Though I was not carrying this child and it was just eggs I had no intention of using, this was not my child but theirs, and Zoe was the vessel. As if I would say no, Lucian had said, so Zoe and I had gone to all the appointments, made sure everything was safe and would work out before deciding to present it to Macy. We didn't want to get her hopes up only for them to crash down again. We had all witnessed her heartache when she couldn't find a donor or surrogate. She desperately wanted to give Tatum a baby, though we all knew he was content with Taylor, but in Macy's eyes, their little family wasn't complete. We wanted to help her complete it. The door opens and Doc walks out, and I think all four of us suddenly forgot how to breathe as we stared at his desk as he sat down and went over his notes. 7 viable eggs, you just have to ask now, Doc tells us, and we all let out a breath simultaneously. I squeeze Zoe's hand excitedly and she squeezes mine back. We had it all planned on how we would ask her. A little corny, but we were excited to see their faces. We will ask at the barbecue tonight, I tell Zoe, and she smiles, while Noah babbles on her lap excitedly, eating his food, having no idea what is going on. The pack house was full of family. Callan and Dad were wrangling the girls. Ava was chasing the kids around the backyard while they pretended the grass was lava and Ava was the lava monster chasing them around the huge climbing frame they played on. The smell of sausage and steak on the barbecue made my mouth water as I carried a salad bowl out and placed it on the table. Tatum was with Dante and Lucian as they manned the meat. Zoe was giving Noah his bottle and talking to Macy about the upcoming event at the hotel and arrangements that needed to be made. Zoe. I sing out and she looks up at me, her lips curling up at the edges as she stands. She passes Noah to Macy. Can you give him to Dante? I just have to help Marin for a second, Zoe says. Sure, she says, taking him while Zoe makes her way over to me. Macy sets her beer down, eyeing us as we disappear back inside. We walk into the kitchen and I grab a boiled egg from the fridge and chuckle at the silliness of it, while Zoe finds the little plastic medical diagram of a womb she bought off eBay. Ready? I ask her, grabbing the paperwork showing she had 7 viable eggs if she wanted to use them. Walking out the back, she was talking to Dante with Noah perched on her hip. Dante, spotting us coming out, nudges Lucian who places the tongs down. Tatum, he called out, who was now talking to my father. He waves him over and Macy was far too distracted talking to Dante, who swiftly steals Noah from her arms just as we stop behind her. Tatum raises an eyebrow at us as we stand with our hands behind our backs. We both fall to one knee in some strange proposal position, making us giggle. Yet she still doesn't turn around. Tatum looks at us as if we have lost the plot before clearing his throat loudly and sipping his beer. Still, Macy was absorbed with lecturing Dante about God knows what when I sigh and reach up, tugging the back of her shirt and she spins around and looks down. I hold up the boiled egg and chuckle. She stares at us amused, and it is obvious she thinks we are just being silly. She takes the egg. If we are having an egg and spoon race, I am totally winning that SHT, she states. Macy, will you let me be your egg donor? I ask her and her smile slips off her face as she gapes at me, at the same Zoe offers her the little plastic Gino womb. Macy, will you put your baby in me? She asks and Macy takes the plastic womb. Lucian reaches down, plucking the doctor's paperwork from my hands and passing it to her. Wait! Are you joking? She asks, staring between us and Lucian taps the paper showing her the number of viable eggs she has, and Tatum reads over her shoulder. Wait, you're both okay with this? Tatum asks, looking between Dante and Lucian. Of course. They both say simultaneously. We can have a baby. Macy asks, stunned, her hands shaking as she stares at the boiled egg and little womb. Is that a yes? Because my knees are killing, kneeling like this, Zoe whines. Are you sure? Macy asks, tears glistening in her eyes and we both nod. Positive. Let us do this for you, Zoe tells her and she sniffles but nods. So that's a yes? I ask, my knees also aching at the position, yet all she does is nod her head, unable to form words. Yes, she finally croaks out and Zoe and I beam with excitement for her. We're going to have a baby, she shrieks, ripping us into her arms since she was taller than us both. Tatum, Dante, and Lucian join in on our group hug. As we all separate and Tatum screams out, "We're having a baby," while hugging Macy and kissing her head. "You're having a baby," I laugh as the kids all scream excitedly, rushing over to join in the celebrations of our little village growing larger. The end. Bonus Chapter 1. Macy 7 eggs later and one finally stuck. The joy I felt when we found out our baby made it past what they considered the safe date was overwhelming. Zoe was devastated each time, just as devastated as I. Some part of my mind thought it just wasn't meant to be. Carter had ruined every chance I had once he marked me. I may now be immune to Forsaken bites, but the venom of his bite had serious ramifications. The city scientists managed to scramble and find a safe vaccine. Thankfully to Lucian's genetic mutation, he was an anomaly and so was Valerian, entirely immune to the effects of the venom, yet for me, the damage was done. I couldn't even try to use my own eggs, and now every year for the rest of my life I would need the vaccine to keep from turning Forsaken myself. Things could have been worse. I could be dead, just like Emily, and those who were infected. Tatum also was subjected to yearly vaccinations too. The last year our lives were turned upside down. One thing we were good at was rebuilding, and each time we did, our foundations were stronger, reinforced with love and family. Our tribe had grown, our city united, and for once we weren't separated by borders, rules, or stereotypes. No, those were things of the past, a past I hoped would never be repeated. Instead, Slasher Pack Alpha stood down, submitted to Marin and Lucian, and the entire city was now one pack. The name Rogue Whore was long forgotten, now we were one pack, just people, coexisting together peacefully. Choice is given freely and everyone is united. Valerie's dream had come true, and for that I was grateful. It showed all our hard work and sacrifice paid off. Here we are, Doc says, pointing at the screen. Zoe grips my hand as Doc moves the device over her rounded belly. He turns the screen so I could see better, and Zoe gazes up at me with a smile on her lips, and Marin drops her chin on my shoulder looking at the screen behind me. You're having a little boy, Doc confirms, and Tatum does a happy dance, fist pumps the air. He was uncaring. Doc could say the kid had 3 heads and he would be just as excited. Crammed in the small space like sardines in a tin can, we all watched as Doc finished the scan. Excitement bubbled within me, and Zoe I could tell was just as ecstatic. Once finished we drove home. On the way back to the pack house Zoe and I discussed going baby shopping. Lucian and Dante were stuck at home on baby duty, and tonight we were doing a gender reveal at the pack house. As the car pulls up out front however we hear utter chaos inside. Marin groans, resting her head back on the headrest beside me. If we are quick we can back out of the driveway before anyone notices, she chuckles. Nope, we have been spotted, Zoe says, and Marin and I lean forward to look out the front window. Lucian was frantically scrubbing the window on the 2nd floor, peg on his nose and wearing gloves. Is that? Zoe looks at Marin. Yep, that is poop, definitely back up, I am not dealing with that today. She whines when Lucian points angrily at the window when Tatum winds down the window and sticks his head out. You good alpha, he sings out, and Lucian shakes his head, trying to open the window, mouthing something, or maybe he was yelling. It was hard to tell because he couldn't seem to open the window. What? We should come back later. Tatum taunts out the window. Yes, that is what he is saying, come back later, Marin says, tapping his shoulder. Quick, let's escape. I hear a bottle of wine and 8 hours sleep calling from the hotel, she says, and Tatum chuckles at her, not realizing she was dead serious. Do you need help? He yells out. Lucian nods his head viciously, pointing and motioning for us to come help. What? I can't hear you. Tatum yells out the window. Lucian presses his lips in a line and facepalms himself before he starts pointing angrily while Marin continues to block the mind link. Marin giggles, Lucian still not realizing when he facepalmed himself he smeared SHT down his face. Oi, face, we'll come back at a better time, Tatum sings out, and Lucian glares at him, pointing angrily and tapping the window. Yes, now let's go, Marin says, tapping Tatum's shoulder. Quick, she snaps at him. Zoe giggles and I lean a little closer, peering out. He still hasn't noticed, Zoe laughs. No sooner than she said it does Lucian remove the peg then sniffs the air looking at his hand like he suddenly grew extra fingers. He blinks, ripping a glove off and wiping his face on the back of his hand. Go, now. Marin squeals and then groans when he loses his stomach on the window he was trying to clean. Valerian wanders over to his father standing at the huge bay windows, holding his sister out like she is contagious, a peg on his nose too. She was n number ked, legs kicking, and we realized who the poopy culprit was that removed her diaper and decided it would be fun to paint in it. Darn it, Marin groans, tossing her door open. I follow, climbing out after her while cackling my head off when she stops abruptly. She points up at the window. No, Valerian, hold. He didn't hold it in as he turned green, seeing his father puke, instead adding to the muck on the window as he too loses his stomach while little Claire cackled, clapping excitedly and patting Valerian on his head. You would think he would have a stronger stomach by now, I tell Marin with a shake of my head as we head inside. Stepping inside, Dante has Noah over his shoulder. Marin and Summer sat on the mat with building blocks while Dante tried to stop Taylor and Casey, who were fighting over a book, playing tug-o-war. Geez, we are gone for an hour and the place is in chaos, I mutter. The girls freeze from their fighting, hearing my voice, and I narrow my eyes, giving them both the look. They straighten up, turning into perfect little angels, batting their eyelashes knowing I don't mess around when it comes to the naughty corner. Thank God! Dante says as Marin rushed up the steps to sort her kids out and Lucian. Zoe waddles in and collapses on the couch, Tatum coming in behind her and passing her some cushions as she lays down. Tatum claps his hands loudly, drawing all the kids' attention. They all stop and stare at him. Time to play a game, he sings out, and they jump excitedly. Called find the house, he yells out. They groan and Casey and Taylor start cleaning up the mess they have made. Marin and Summer plop back on their bottoms, tossing their blocks back in the bucket, just as the doorbell rings, and I peer over my shoulder to see a figure through the stained glass. Wandering over to the door, I pull it open to see Alpha Dakeson, John, and Callan. Grandpa! Taylor squeals behind me and rushes over to her grandfather. He scoops her up, propping her on his hip and stepping inside just as Lucian comes down the stairs drying his face with a towel. Dad! Great, you're just in time, Lucian exclaims. I am? Callan asks. Yep, SHT explosion upstairs. I nominate you to take my place, Lucian says, and Callan looks at John. Scissors, paper, rock. He asks John. He's your son, John says. He's your son-in-law. John raises an eyebrow at him and I watch as Dakeson steps closer, and pecks my cheek. Afternoon, love, he chuckles, moving to help the girls clean up. Just as I am about to close the door, I see Ava's car pull into the driveway and step aside to wait for her too. Ava wanders in, a bottle of wine clutched in her hand, and she stops in her tracks watching her father and Callan argue over who is helping Marin upstairs. They stop as she enters, both turning to face her. Ava! My favoritist daughter, John exclaims. What? She groans. I'll give you. Callan sifts through his pockets and Ava pops her hip and places a hand on it. He pulls out some cash, a few fives, and a $10.25. Callan announces. Nope. Whatever it is, no, she says, and Callan nudges her father, who starts fishing in his pockets. He pulls out a 20. I'll add $20 and a peppermint, John says. Have I told you why you're my favorite sister-in-law? Lucian says, reaching for her and leading her upstairs. I'm your only sister-in-law. Exactly. And that is why you never have to compete for that special spot, I clear my throat and raise an eyebrow when the mind link opens up. You know you're my favorite, just don't tell Zoe, Lucian says, and I shake my head while closing the door. Bonus Chapter 2. Marin, I don't like it, Lucian growls, pacing the living room. I sigh, trying to work through the backlog of paperwork I have been avoiding. If he paces any more, I would need to replace the carpet. Lucian stops next to the coffee table. Do you hear it? Does it not bother you? He demands, and I raise an eyebrow and shake my head, turning back to the paperwork resting on my lap when my pen suddenly disappears from my hand. Annoyed, I huff, pinning him with a glare. Can you hear it? It's driving me insane. Hear what? I ask, shaking my head and holding my hand out expectantly for my pen. Exactly. Lucian hisses, passing my pen back. It's so quiet, he mutters to himself. I roll my eyes. Is he seriously still carrying on over this? Yep, it is great. I can now scratch me without one of them being up it. Lucian glares at me. I'm going to get them. He snatches up his keys, and I gr0an and rest my head back on the couch. They have been at school for not even 2 hours, this is part of life. Kids grow up. They need to go to school, Lucian. Then we homeschool. Simple problem solved, I blink at him before pursing my lips. And who would be doing this homeschooling? You, of course. I have to work, frickening way. I finally have 6 hours of freedom. I am not giving that up. Nope, if you want to pull the girls from school to homeschool, you are doing homeschooling, I growl at him. I have a city to run, I can't homeschool, you'll have to quit and do it, Lucian tells me. Exactly why am I homeschooling if you aren't going to be here? I ask him. He grumbles, pacing some more. I can't take the SHT silence. It's too quiet, too fricka-ing quiet, Marin, how does it not bother you? I don't even bother answering. He is being irrational. The man hates mess, hates loud noise, and suddenly the girls start school, and he's on the verge of a nervous breakdown. He has cleaned the house frantically in an hour, and then the next hour, he has paced the floor so much I swear I see tracks. Lucian stops again, and I wait for his tirade when he jumps. I got it, I toss my paperwork aside. Clearly, I was getting no work done today. I glance at my mate, his tailored suit ruffled from his stress, the top 2 buttons on his shirt undone. He stands with his hands on his hips like he has a solution to the problem I didn't know we apparently had. My eyes skim over his face, and his lips tugged up into a smirk before I meet his dazzling amber eyes. I was ogling. I did that too much these days, but when my eyes go to his, I don't like the look on his face. He is too upbeat, like there was some joke I wasn't in on. His smile grows devious. Before I can demand to know what he is on about now, he slowly, methodically walks around the coffee table as if he is stalking prey and not his mate and wife. He stops in front of me, and I raise an eyebrow at him. I don't like the smirk on his face. Something sinister about it makes my ovaries shrivel up and die instantly. I shake my head, and he nods, ing his lips. Nope, out of the question, not happening, I snap at him. Before I could give him a list of reasons for why we have too many children and more was not an option, he grabs me. He tosses me over his shoulder, and I beat his back with my paperwork going everywhere and scattering on the floor. I am putting another bun in this oven, Lucian declares, stalking off toward the stairs. Like hell you are. I growl, biting his back and thumping my fist against him. It's the only solution. Problem solved, Lucian tells me while I grip the handrail on the stairs. He is brought to a stop, twists, prying my fingers off. That's it, the bastard asked for it. I open the mind link, pulling on the big guns. I search for his father. Hey, Evie. What's up? I am about to kill your son. So, I will need someone to help bury the body, I growl at him. I'm listening, very intriguing. Bring a shovel. Man, that is a big hole to dig. I will ask your father to come help and tell him to bring an extra shovel, Callan tells me. I grip the wall cornice with my fingertips. Lucian is cackling his head off like a madman while I hang on for dear life and for the sake of my womb. Exactly why are we plotting to kill my son? Callan asks. The bastard is trying to impregnate me. I snap at him as if it is his fault. Well, he spawned him, he can deal with him. Like right now? I really think this is hardly the time for a mind link. I love you, Marin, but there are just some images I don't want of my daughter-in-law in my head. Not now, he is trying to kidnap me. Bring a big shovel, so I can beat him with it. So this act hasn't been performed yet. Oh. If it's a boy, can we name this one Callan? Oh, or maybe Kal. You're supposed to be on my side. I screech at him. There are sides. I growl at him through the link as Lucian turns onto the third-floor stairwell. Yes, there are sides. Now pick one. Either you sort out your son, or you help me bury the body, I snap at Callan. He sighs. So back to this name situation, Kal would be fitting for a girl too, Pad. I snarl at him. Fine, fine, he sighs, shoving the mind link open and including Lucian. Oh, you want to do this telepathically? I can whisper sweet nothings in your head instead of your ear, Lucian purrs. Please don't, not while I am here, Callan quips. Lucian stops when I feel his hand comes down on me over my skirt. I jump and yelp. That's cheating, and you know it, they always take your side. Lucian growls. Because I am his favorite. I snap at Lucian, gripping a door handle, and my fingers slide off. I am his son. This is some bull sht, he huffs, stopping outside our bedroom, and still not putting me down. Lucian, put the Luna down and step away from your mate. No. Lucian huffs defiantly. We have plotted your death and organized the location for your body, Callan warns him. Is it at least a nice resting spot, and will you visit regularly and clean it? Lucian taunts. Put the Luna down, son. Callan argues. I snicker to myself, listening to them bicker. Nope. I will cut you a deal, if it's a boy I will name it Kal, Lucian states triumphantly. Callan falls silent for a second. Oh, really? I growl and Callan clears his throat awkwardly. Such a strong name, your counter-offer, Evie? I think his poor father gets dragged into all our arguments, playing mediator. I think hard about my offer. Lucian will mow your laws for the next year, I declare. Lucian scoffs, his hand coming down again. Now that is a nice offer. Backyard too. Yep, even weed the gardens. I assure him. You can't offer me. Lucian growls. As Luna, I think she can, Callan adds. So many choices, he taunts, but we all know who he is going to pick me. I could SHT on that man's lawn right in front of him, and he would say it was the neighbor's cat. Put the Luna down, Lucian. Don't make me cover up your murder, Callan tells him, and Lucian growls. Fine. He huffs, and I go flying. A shriek leaves me as he dumps me on the bed. I bounce and Lucian smirks down at me with his hands folded. I feel the mind link dissolve. You always cheat and play dirty, he accuses. I don't want any more kids, I tell him. 2 more. Lucian pleads, crawling onto the bed. I shake my head, finding his pleading amusing. Fine, if you want 2 more kids, then I want a Ferrari. I tell him, knowing well he wouldn't waste money on one. He was more frugal than me these days. Lucian jumps off the bed, and rushes from the room before returning. He jumps on the bed dropping something. I grab it and giving him a deadpan look. A toy one. There, I got you a Ferrari. He declares and I shake my head. 1 more, he begs. Nope, I was not changing my mind. He grabs my face in his hands. 3 more, he offers. How did we go from 1 to 3, he laughs. So 1 it is, he declares. Definitely not, I will buy you a puppy, I tell him. Lucian pulls a face at me. I am not having a dog on my floor. But a baby can. I deadpan. They wear diapers. Please, please, just 1, I will look after it. He gave me his best puppy dog eyes, but I was not falling for it. I shake my head. He gr0ans, dropping his head against my shoulder. Fine, I'll take the puppy, he whines before lifting his head. But can we at least still pretend to make a baby, he asks, his amber eyes glinting back at me as he rocks his hips against me. I grab his head, pushing him down. I can be persuaded, I chuckle. Bonus Chapter 3. 6 months later. Frankie, get back here with my shoe, I screech, chasing the dog through the house. He races up the stairs, my heel in his mouth while I try to catch the little turd. His short stumpy legs run a million miles an hour as he tries to evade me. Frankie! I screech as he darts into one of the kids' rooms. He peeks over his tiny shoulder, giving me a challenging look before he hides under Valerian's bed. Come here, puppy, puppy, give me my shoe, or I will make one out of you, I growl at him. I reach for the squirming beast, gripping the heel, and it becomes a game of tug-o-war. Give me my shoe. Should have chosen the baby, Lucian says behind me, and I jump, bumping my head. I wiggle out from under the bed. We have a meeting, and your dog stole my heel. I snap at him. Lucian whistles, and Frankie yelps excitedly. Now, Frankie! Lucian calls. I see his little head poke out from under the bed, my heel covered in slobber. He slinks his way out, and I eye the little Frenchie. Does he not realize I could shift and eat him? Yet, the rotten little sod, still tries my patience. He races over to Lucian, dropping my heel at his feet. Who's a good boy, Lucian says, while crouching down and patting his little head. Good boy. I snap, snatching my heel that is covered in slobber and now chewed on. Leave his shoe fetish alone. He gets it from his mama, Lucian chuckles, scratching his belly while his tongue lolls out the side. Valerian comes in, seeing what the commotion is. He scoops Frankie up, taking him from his father. Is mama being mean, Frankie? He coos, pulling faces at him. If anything, the dog has done wonders for their OCD. It is practically non-existent, though Valerian and Lucian still have a thing about coasters. Who would have thought that breed of dog was so navty? I scold the cute little squashed-faced dog. He CKs frantically at Valerian's face. Don't listen to her, Frankie. You're a good boy, and I know where she keeps her favorite shoes, he whispers. Valerian, don't you dare, I scold him, and he snickers, walking off. While trying to fix my clothes for my meeting across town, I looked down and gr0an. I was covered in his fur. No. Now I need to find something else to wear. Walking out of the room, Lucian follows me back to our room to quickly change once dressed and semi-presentable. He then follows me downstairs, where Macy and her son are playing with Taylor and Casey with some blocks. It was the middle of the school holidays, and everywhere I look, I was stepping on children or playing Russian roulette with toys. Yet I wouldn't have it any other way. It was chaotic and messy, but so worth it. Are you going to meet this new alpha coming into the city? Macy asks. Yes, we are just waiting for my father to get here to help with the kids, I tell her, and she nods. Zoe was working, covering my shift at the hotel today, while Lucian, Dante, and I went to check out this new alpha wanting to move into the city. We valued our way of life here and wouldn't accept just anyone in to ruin that peace. But with the werewolf cities becoming fewer after human government seizures of land and new regulations coming in, there was nowhere to house everyone. And since werewolves are centered around pack communities, we have had no choice but to accept 2 new packs. One was easily dismantled, and Alpha Dakeson, Taylor's grandfather, decided to reunite his pack. He had stood down to us and given us ultimate control, and we still have it. But with the city's growing numbers and pack members growing antsy with strangers, they felt more comfortable in their own packs. Yet the laws on rogues will never be accepted in our city again. So far, we have had no issues, and most of the packs that did come here either joined ours, or Alpha Dakeson's. The Alphas not caring for titles and land as long their packs could stay together, so the city was more council-run now. Everyone equal, everyone gets a say. Yet we had qualms about this new pack. Slowly we had extended the city borders all the way out to the mountains, subdivisions had gone in, and even a new rail development. But this new alpha, he doesn't want to join another pack, he wanted his own, and that is what this meeting is about. He wants to buy half my land, he wants the Forsaken territory. We had no plans for it, so I had considered it, but before we agree, I wanted to meet him. Suss out exactly who he is and any intentions he has. We won't allow disruption to the peace we finally have here. Hearing the door open, a chorus of Grandpa rang out as the kids rushed toward him and I smile, "Love you Dad, bye." I call over the chaos while grabbing Lucian's hand to escape for a moment's peace by ourselves. Bonus Chapter 4. The meeting with the new alpha went off without a hitch. He was around the same age as Lucian, perhaps a few months here or there, though not as clean-cut. The new alpha was more of a rough around the edges type of guy. He also had a son around Valerian's age. We learned he was a single father and had built his pack from nothing, all on his own. He didn't mention any family besides his son, so we took it as a sign that the man had no one who had helped him after his wife passed. His story was very similar to mine. His pack was originally a pack of rogues, and his pack that had lived in Lake City was forced out by the human councils, who took over the city. After meeting him, we decided to invite him back home for dinner. We thought it was a nice gesture and could help us to get to know him better. Everyone knew how wrong trusting strangers was, and this guy technically was just that, a stranger, so although we were friendly and nice, we also were still slightly cautious. Until his pack settled in, we had decided to give him Nixon's old pack lands. We would give him enough time, he could use the old lands which had been pretty much abandoned, until he built out the land he was purchasing and extended his borders out. Checking my phone, I sighed. Lucian was still talking to Alpha Lee, while I was watching and waiting in the car. I wanted to get home. The comfort and warmth of home was calling me back. It pulled on my heart like a magnet as the odd feeling of missing the kids overwhelmed me. They drive me up the wall, but there was no place I would rather be. Besides, we still needed to tidy up before the Alpha and his son arrived at home in 2 hours. We couldn't let them think we were slobs, and the way I left the house it would look like it with toys scattered everywhere. People judged others when they entered houses, and I would be d***ned if I allowed anyone to judge me, especially the new Alpha. I knew that Macy and Zoe were already tidying up, and my father was setting up the tables out back, but I still wanted to get home and freshen up before his arrival. Plus, I wanted out of these Godchtheels. They were killing me. The beep the horn at him was strong as I watched him happily chatting away to Alpha Lee on the steps. However, what seemed off was that Lucian was super excited about something. I could see it from where I watched him. Not that I didn't want to see him happy or excited, but darn, it made me feel a little suspicious about their conversation. I arched an eyebrow and focused on them as I tried to figure out what they were discussing. The feeling through the bond was almost giddy, yet I could feel the hint of nervousness about something. I was just about to beep the horn when I finally saw them shaking hands. Finally! I muttered to myself as Lucian strolled over to the car. He climbed into the driver's seat. I didn't give him enough time to settle in as I turned my entire body to him. "What are you so excited about?" I demanded an answer while he unbuttoned his suit jacket and shrugged it off. My suspicions about his out-of-the-character behavior grew when he tossed the jacket onto the back seat. Usually, he hung it up and ensured it stayed neat for the next time he might need it. I watched as he plugged in his seatbelt. He shrugged again, and I raised an eyebrow at him. "What? I can't be excited about a new pack coming to the city?" he asked, while turning the key in the ignition. I shook my head. I just wanted to get home to shower. If that meant that I had to miss out on some answers, so be it. Alpha Lee will be at our house in 3 hours instead of 2, he just needs to duck home real quick. He added as his eyes focused on the road ahead. Lake City was on the other side of the mountains. Before the bypass went in it would be a 4-hour round trip. The new road and tunnels, cutting through the mountain, lessened that time by more than half. "Sounds good, gives us more time to get everything ready." I spoke right as a yawn escaped me. To minimize the awful sound, I covered my mouth with my hand. Lucian hummed as he drummed his fingers on the steering wheel. There had to be something he was hiding from me. There just had to. I could see how weirder he was getting with each passing second, feel it through the bond like alarm bells going off. He could barely sit still in his seat. Once we arrived home, I saw that my father and Lucian's had recruited help in setting up because the street was lined with cars. The barbecue was open to whoever wanted to attend to meet the new Alpha. Just for that fact alone, I wasn't surprised by the amount of people here. They had a chance to meet someone new and get free food. I mean, who wouldn't take up on an offer like that? I would fall for the free food offer, screw everything else if it meant I didn't have to cook. Valerian came rushing out of the house the moment our car pulled into the driveway. I felt as if every time when I closed my eyes, that boy somehow managed to grow. Literally by seconds. And now, he was getting so tall that he was nearly as tall as me. Not to mention that every day he looked more and more like his father. He was a carbon copy of him, just a little smaller. Well, he was smaller for now. "Where are the girls?" I asked him as his father scooped him up, hanging him over his shoulder. Valerian laughed and giggled as he dangled half upside down. "Out the back with Pop," he answered while he was trying to wrestle out of his father's grip. "Is Dante home?" Lucian asked him as he finally set our son on the ground. "Yep, just got home," Valerian told him. So Alpha Lee has a son? Valerian asked, excitedly. Yep, his name is Sam, I told him as I smiled at my son and grabbed the last of the files from the back seat along with my purse and Lucian's discarded suit jacket. I rolled my eyes at the piece of clothing. Our son might have distracted me when we pulled up, but this once again reminded me of how suspicious my mate was acting. Which, in turn, annoyed me since I wanted to know and drop the matter at the same time. Valerian and Lucian moved toward the door. I huffed at them, like father, like son, forsake. No, guys, don't you mind me, I'm all good being the donkey of this family and carrying everything. Thanks for your help. I called after Lucian and he stopped in his step. His brows furrowed before his eyes widened when he finally saw how much I was struggling as I tried to juggle everything I was carrying. Valerian laughed as his father quickly rushed back to help. What's gotten into you? I snapped at him. He usually wasn't this distracted. Once again, he gave me a vague answer of being excited about the new Alpha coming to the city. As soon as I had dropped everything inside the downstairs office, I spent the next 2 hours helping to set everything up for the barbecue, making some salads and getting the kids' table set up. When I was done, I checked on the triplets and went upstairs to shower. I was just stripping off my clothes when I heard scratching on the bathroom door before it was nudged open by Frankie. I patted his little head as he lay down on the bathroom floor mat and stripped my clothes off, eyeing the Frenchie suspiciously. He still wasn't forgiven for his earlier stunt of eating my heels. You better not be in here to cause mischief, I warned him. He moved his head to the side and his tongue lolled out of his mouth. My wild guess was that the SHT actually thought he was winning by being cute and would earn himself some extra pats. I shook my head at him as I tossed my heels off next to the door, and climbed into the shower. Halfway through my shower, I glanced out to find Frankie in the shower screen. His big eyes were watching me as he tried to open the shower screen and climb in. He was a terror. I snapped the door shut as he nudged it with his squished nose. No, go harass Valerian or the girls, I told him. Squeezing some shampoo in my hand, I started washing my hair. Rinsing it out, I opened my eyes to find Frankie was eyeing me through the shower screen, only this time he had my designer high heels in his mouth. I pointed at him. Don't you dare! He dropped it, and I was just about to go back to showering when he grabbed it and darted for the door. I tried to slam the door shut before the little took off out the door. But he weaseled his chunky body out the door just in the nick of time. I growled as I had to shut the water off and jump out of the shower. Angrily, I snatched my towel off and wrapped it around my body as I darted out, after him. He was standing by the bedroom door, looking in at me. These were my only heels he hadn't slobbered on. Here puppy, give me the shoe, I tried to coo like Lucian did when he was calling the dog spawn of Satan. I crept forward as I held my hand outstretched, when he took off again. Little fucker! I cursed, chasing after him. Frankie, get back here! I snarled at the pint-sized dog. I was going to skin it and turn it into slippers. He darted for the stairs and I snarled at Lucian to help me through the mind link but got no answer. The mutt moved to the second floor and turned for the last set of steps. Get back here! I ordered the half a dog. He stopped briefly, the little bastard was taunting me. I slowed down, trying not to spook him as he adjusted his grip on my $1,000 heels he was drooling all over. I was nearly beside him when I tried to snatch the shoe, but he took off down the next set of steps. I must have sounded like a stampede of elephants coming down the stairs as I chased the mongrel when I saw Lucian heading toward the stairs out of the corner of my eye. Taking the next step, my foot slipped on something and everything slowed down. Everything as my stomach flopped as I went just as Lucian opened the front door. My scream was visceral as I stepped on a Hot Wheels car and started somersaulting down the steps. Lucian shrieked, and I felt his panic as I landed on my back, my towel having unraveled and disappeared. "Crap, are you all right?" Lucian asked, helping me sit up to find Alpha Lee standing at the front door. I blinked at him and his son. "Dad, I see her babies," the boy whispered, tugging on his dad's jacket while pointing at me. The Alpha shook his head, coming out of his shock, and his hand covered his son's eyes as he gaped at me. I shrieked, ripping Lucian to me to cover my enved body. Frankie had done his dash with me now, he was definitely becoming my next set of slippers. Alpha Lee cleared his throat, looking up at the ceiling. "We'll go around the back way," Alpha Lee said, rushing off. I gritted my teeth and looked at Lucian. "Where is he?" I growled, my eyes scanning the area. I found Frankie chomping away on my heel by the fireplace. "I'm sure it was an accident," Lucian defended his thief of a dog. "It dies. I kill it." I screamed at him, absolutely livid. That dog was my nemesis, and now he was my next set of slippers. "How about you go get dressed, and I will go speak with the Alpha?" Lucian offered, edging closer to his devil dog. He scooped him up before I could wring his neck. "Besides, I have a surprise for you later, that'll cheer you up," he added. Lucian stepped closer to me, quickly pecked my cheek, and darted off with his shoe goblin. I growled as I started stalking back to the room to get dressed. Bonus Chapter 5. As I walked back down to the barbecue, I felt like I was doing a walk of shame. After the adventure that shoe shredder of a half-dog pulled me into, this sure felt like one of the most embarrassing things I had experienced. Not to mention the fact that the new Alpha's son saw me, so did the Alpha, but at least he didn't say anything. The little guy, oh yeah, he went full on and pointed at me with his finger just to tell his dad he could see me. I was sure he had already told the story to the entire party, which, by no means, made me feel any better. Yet, as I joined everyone, Alpha Lee seemed to have forgotten his introduction to the pack house. Valerian and his son became quick friends. Way faster than I imagined, but that made me feel a little better about everything. As I scanned the crowd, I noticed that Taylor and Casey also seemed to get along with Sam pretty well, and the boy didn't seem to be traumatized by meeting me before he got the chance to meet me. My cheeks heated up again as I recalled the incident. That was so darn gone, he had no idea what was coming for him. Oh, I got a better idea. How about I make a hat out of his skin and gifted it to the very man who brought the menace in my life? For the time being, I focused back on the barbecue. We had guests, many of them, and it was already enough that 2 of them witnessed me at my worst. The others wouldn't see how far I was willing to go for revenge. Just like the meeting, it went off without a hitch, everyone enjoyed themselves, and as the night came to an end, Lucian's excitement lifted to magnitude levels when we all heard the sound of an engine revving out the front. "Ah, finally arrived," Alpha Lee said as he slapped Lucian's CH3ST. Lucian nodded for me to follow him and Alpha Lee. "Who is it?" I asked him, but he remained tight-lipped. As we passed Zoe, she chuckled, and once again, I grew suspicious of her odd behavior. "What?" I asked her. "Nothing, congratulations." She snickered, covering her giggling with her hand. My eyes narrowed on her. I went to ask her what she meant when Lucian grabbed my hand and tugged me after him. He led me up the side of the house. At one point, he stopped us and covered my eyes with his hands. "Yeah, nothing to worry about, just a shoe shredder, my mate keeping secrets and an entire pack of people who seemed to know something I didn't. Lucian, what are you doing? I hissed at him as he led me out the gate to the driveway. I kept tugging at his hands, but he didn't release me, so I gave up on trying. Just a second later, he stopped me again. Thanks, Cole, I heard Alpha Lee tell someone when Lucian's lips kissed the side of my neck. Remember when you said if I wanted another baby, you wanted a Ferrari? Lucian purred in my ear. My face dropped as I wondered what he meant by those words. I didn't like the C0CKY tone of his voice. What had my mate done now? He lifted his hands from my eyes. Tada, Lucian sang triumphantly. I blinked at the Ferrari in the driveway. I said that because I knew he would never get me one. It was nothing but an excuse to get out of the baby talk. And yet, here it was, a bright canary yellow Ferrari sat in my driveway. Alpha Lee tossed me the keys and I barely caught them before they hit the ground. I stared at the keys only to hear laughing from the side of the house as Macy and Zoe peered around the corner at my horror. How was my worst nightmare amusing them? Had they lost the last remnants of their minds? They knew I had goals to accomplish, they even helped me plan. I shook my head as I finally reached the understanding of what Zoe's congratulations were for. Lucian thought he was spitting another litter out of me. Heck no. No, we have the slippers. I told him, as I glanced at him. A deal is a deal. Lucian huffed as he plucked the keys from my hands. I shook my head and glared at Alpha Lee. I knew he owned the most car dealerships in the country, but... no. Alpha Lee put his hands up in surrender. He asked, I delivered. He laughed. And for half the price. Lucian chirped in a stupidly happy tone. I turned slowly and clenched my teeth. We have my slippers, I told him, pointing to Frankie, who was excitedly watching from the front window. Now, I need a robe, your pelt will do just fine. I growled at him. Lucian's face fell. He backed up. Hey, I delivered on my end, a deal is a deal. He said as he folded his arms across his CH3ST. By now, both our fathers and those who remained were in the driveway, getting ready to leave or just watching us. He has a point, Evie. A deal is a deal. Macy chimed in and I shot her a glare. To which she just laughed. And about the name, is Callan or Kal still on the table? Callan asked. I pressed my lips in a line, shooting my father-in-law a look to shut it. He shrugged when my father wandered over with Ava, both ready to leave. He stopped, giving me a hug and kiss. Congratulations, sweetheart. Hopefully, this one is a boy. I slapped his arm, and he laughed, rushing off before I could kick him too. Lucian smirked, thinking he had won. He may have won this one. But he has to sleep sometime. We bid our farewells to everyone before we headed back up the side of the house to clean up when Macy spoke. I predict this time it will be Quadar. I clamped my hands over her mouth. Shut it, you jinxed me last time, I snarled at her, and she laughed, swatting my hands away. Hey, that reminds me, Lucian. You still owe me that foot rub. She called after him. He peeked over his shoulder. I am not touching those Neanderthal feet. He said, and she growled. You be rubbing my feet. She snapped, as she darted after him. I shook my head, and Tatum laughed as she gave chase. Bonus Chapter 6. Later that night. I knew from the beginning that it was a bad idea to agree to Lucian's deal, although I knew without a doubt he would not be letting me get out of it. I had started it myself, of course, by saying I wanted a Ferrari if he wanted a baby. I underestimated him and his eagerness. He had laughed at me, and said he would take the puppy. I thought that would be the end of it. Apparently not. How about some fish? I offered and Lucian smirked. Not a chance, you're paying up, he purred as he climbed onto the bed. A guinea pig? I asked. Not a chance. You're not getting out of it. He growled, ping at my ghs as he crawled up my body. He pushed my night dress up, then kisses my stomach. I am filling this womb, a deal is a deal, he growled, ping at my flesh. You got a Frankie? I retort. And now a warm womb to house another pup, he chuckles. That double dipping. I snap. No, but I don't mind double dipping tonight to ensure you are filled with my seed, he laughs. I roll my eyes at him. I should have asked for a jet, I shake my head. I go to protest some more, and try to talk my way out of it, when he silenced me with his lips as he settled between my legs. I am 0an into his mouth as his tongue invades mine, his hard muscled body pressing against me. Sparks spread across my body. Every inch of my skin is covered in goosebumps. And my breath hitched as he devours my lips in a soul-sucking kiss. I feel like I am on some sort of high, which makes it hard to see straight. I can't concentrate. It's all too much, and Lucian knows exactly how to get what he wants, how to get me to comply. And I knew he would get what he wanted because he was not going to give me a chance to back out. Yet some small part of me didn't want to anyway and was coming around to the idea. Lucian breaks the kiss, then with one hand he tugs off his shirt, tossing it aside. A smirk dancing on his lips as he sits back on his knees. I raise an eyebrow at him as he reaches for my night dress. A gasp of surprise leaves my lips when he yanks on it, ping it straight up the middle. Lucian! I hiss at the sting. I just bought that one, I pout. He chuckles, uncaring, eyes solely on the prize he thinks he won. You owe me, he forces my mouth open with his tongue, and I have no choice but to oblige as he presses his weight against me, cutting off my words once more. I shiver, the pool of arousal only growing more prominent. My heart beats out of my chest, nauseatingly. I want more. I want so much more. And so I allow him to explore my mouth with his tongue, in a rhythm so fast I can barely keep up with it. His claws rake my hip, earning another growl from me, to which he ignores. Yet I feel the hint of a smile as he kisses me. He hums. Just shut up before one of the kids barges in. I tell him. At my words, he wastes no time. He bumps my nose with his before kissing me and letting me rest on top of him. Give me a minute, he growls, and I raise an eyebrow at him. No, I need sleep. I whine. You can sleep once you're knocked up, he laughs. I have plans, Mr. Solace. I growl at him. So do I, to fill this womb, he chuckles. I shake my head. Now was not the best time to get pregnant, but was ever a right time? We'll see what happens, I guess. Lucian sweeps my hair behind my ear and gr0ans. You don't want any more? He sighs like he was hoping I changed my mind. In a sense, I had, but the timing, I had big plans, goals to reach. No, I relent, and he smiles. Then what is it? The state meeting. I can't be pregnant for that. I'll be run off my feet. I rub them, he offers, and I roll my eyes. How am I going to look after a baby while running for state? I ask him. For the first time humans were allowing us in office and I wanted to rid the rogue laws for good, win our cities back and fight for equal rights. With my help. Always with my help, he promises. I chew my lip and his fingers trail up my sides. So you decided you are going to run for it then? I sigh and nod my head. Are you sure, Mrs. Solace? I tilt my head, watching as his lips tug in the corners. I don't know, I have my doubts. What you're planning is unachievable, you'll never do it, he taunts. I sit up, straddling his hips. Is that right? He shrugs. Impossible, you can't run for office, he growls, and I grip his face. Watch me. I growl. Lucian grips the back of my neck, as he rolls me onto my back, pressing me into the mattress. Always, he promises. The end. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.